There are certain relationships that enter your life without warning, as if two souls are quietly bound by an invisible contract, written not on paper, but deep within the unconscious. I call this a soul contract, a binding of hidden wounds, shadows, and unacknowledged parts of the self. Today, we explore one such contract between the narcissist and the empath. The narcissist believes they hold all the power, controlling the empath's love and kindness. Yet, what happens when this very contract, this invisible bond, unexpectedly turns against them? Listen closely, for this is a shadow dance you must understand. Hit subscribe and begin the journey back to your true self. There is a silent agreement that binds two souls long before either fully understands what has drawn them together. This contract is unseen, unwritten, and yet it carries an immense weight, a bond formed not by conscious choice, but by the deeper workings of the unconscious mind. Between the empath and the narcissist, this contract is particularly potent. It is born in the meeting place of two wounds, two shadows, and two desperate longings. The empath, by nature, carries within themselves a vast ocean of compassion. This compassion is not superficial. It flows from a deep well of sensitivity and an ability to feel the suffering of others as if it were their own. But this gift often comes at a hidden cost. The empath is frequently unaware of the true depths of their own pain. Their focus on others' emotions masks an internal landscape riddled with neglected wounds. They have learned, sometimes painfully, to put others first, absorbing pain, offering forgiveness, and extending kindness even when their own heart aches. This selfless giving is their armor and their vulnerability at once. On the other side stands the narcissist, cloaked in a mask of strength, confidence, and control. To the outside world, they appear certain, powerful, and self-sufficient. Yet beneath this carefully crafted exterior lies a fragile self that trembles with insecurity. The narcissist is, in truth, a soul desperate for validation, for affirmation, for the reflection of worth that they cannot find within themselves. This inner fragility is the root of their relentless need to manipulate and control, to shape others, especially empaths, into mirrors that validate their existence. These two wounded souls, one deeply compassionate, the other desperately seeking validation, are unconsciously drawn to one another. Their meeting is not happenstance, but a collision of shadows. Jung taught us that every person carries a shadow, the parts of ourselves we hide, deny, or reject. When these shadows resonate in two people, they form unconscious agreements, soul contracts that bind their fates. For the narcissist, the empath represents a source of endless emotional supply, a wellspring of attention, admiration, and forgiveness. The narcissist's belief is absolute, that the empath will give endlessly, forgive every slight, and endure every emotional storm. This belief is not rooted in reality, but in a carefully maintained illusion, a fantasy of control. They feel themselves masters of the contract, puppeteers pulling the strings of an empath who will never break free. However, this illusion of mastery blinds the narcissist to the true power of the empath's spirit. The empath's generosity is vast, but not infinite. Beneath their kindness lies a strength, often hidden even from themselves, a capacity for self-preservation that awakens over time. The empath may be drawn into the contract by unconscious forces, but their soul is also on a path of awakening. The deeper their self-awareness grows, the more they recognize the boundaries they must set, the wounds they must heal within themselves. This unseen contract between empath and narcissist is therefore a delicate and dangerous dance. It is a contract not of love in its purest form, but of mutual need of wounded souls seeking what they cannot find alone. The empath seeks to heal, to give, to transform suffering into compassion. The narcissist seeks to hide, to control, and to secure a false sense of self-worth. Yet, the empath's healing journey inevitably challenges the narcissist's illusion of control. The soul contract that once served the narcissist's ego becomes a battlefield. What was meant to bind the empath now contains the seeds of freedom. The empath's awakening threatens to shatter the narcissist's fragile identity, exposing the emptiness behind the mask. In this unseen contract, neither soul is fully aware of the terms they have agreed to. The narcissist believes in their dominance, unaware of the contract's potential to backfire. The empath believes in their compassion, sometimes blind to the costs until awakening begins. Both are caught in a shadow dance, each unaware of how deeply their wounds are intertwined. Ultimately, this contract reveals a profound truth, that our unconscious patterns and shadow selves draw us into relationships that reflect our deepest struggles. It is a call to consciousness, an invitation to face ourselves honestly and to break free from cycles of pain and control. So, as you listen to this, ask yourself, what unseen contracts bind you? What shadows are you dancing with? And are you ready to awaken from the illusions that hold you captive? The illusion of control begins to shatter. Expanded explanation. Control is the narcissist's greatest delusion. It is a fragile illusion carefully constructed to hide a deep and terrifying vulnerability. The narcissist believes, with unshakable certainty, that they are the masters of the relationship, that the empath is a wellspring of energy and forgiveness, endlessly available to prop up their fragile ego. But this belief, like all illusions born of the unconscious, is destined to unravel. The narcissist's strategy is familiar. Push, manipulate, exploit, and drain the empath's emotional resources. They test boundaries relentlessly, probing for weaknesses, setting traps to ensure the empath remains entangled. To the narcissist, the empath's kindness is not a gift, but a commodity to be extracted and consumed. They convince themselves that the empath's generosity is limitless, that no matter how harsh the treatment or how great the emotional toll, the empath will give more. Yet beneath this relentless control lies a critical misunderstanding. The narcissist fails to see the empath as a whole, being a soul with its own strength, boundaries, and capacity for awakening. They mistake the empath's silence for submission and their empathy for weakness. But in truth, the empath's spirit is quietly stirring, a subtle but unstoppable force gathering momentum beneath the surface. Every act of manipulation, every attempt to control, paradoxically loosens the invisible chains that bind the empath. Each boundary tested is a challenge met. Each emotional wound endured is a step towards self-realization. The empath's unconscious begins to awaken to the pattern of abuse, the imbalance of power, and the cost of their giving. The soul contract, which was once a weapon wielded by the narcissist, begins to transform. What once sustained the narcissist's ego, the empath's constant emotional supply, starts to fade. The contract's grip tightens, not around the empath, but around the narcissist's own neck. This noose is made of the narcissist's own shadows and projections. Their fear of abandonment, their profound insecurity, and their dependence on external validation begin to consume them. As the empath's awakening grows, the narcissist's illusion of control shatters like fragile glass. The mirror that once reflected their false identity breaks, revealing the raw and painful truth beneath. This shattering is terrifying for the narcissist because it forces a confrontation with their own shadow, the parts of themselves they have long denied or repressed. Their power crumbles not because the empath is stronger in a conventional sense, but because the empath is reclaiming autonomy and self-awareness. The soul contract, a cycle of unconscious giving and taking, turns upside down. The narcissist, once confident in their mastery, finds themselves trapped by the very contract they believed they controlled. Their desperation increases as they lose the emotional fuel that sustained their facade. In this collapse, the narcissist may lash out, attempt to regain control through more extreme means, or retreat into denial and dissociation. For the empath, this stage is both perilous and powerful. The awakening is often accompanied by confusion, pain, and doubt. The empath must learn to distinguish between compassion and self-sacrifice, between empathy and enabling. They face the difficult task of reclaiming their own boundaries, learning to say no, and stepping out of the role the narcissist assigned them. This transformation is not instantaneous. It is a gradual process of recognizing the pattern, feeling the emotional cost, and choosing a different path. The empath's growing self-awareness breaks the cycle of unconscious submission, inviting healing and growth. The soul contract is no longer a prison, but a mirror reflecting the truth of both souls. It reveals the narcissist's shadow and the empath's emerging strength. The balance of power shifts not through force, but through consciousness. This moment, the beginning of the illusion's collapse, is a turning point. It heralds the potential for liberation, not just for the empath, but for both souls. Yet, it also demands courage, honesty, and the willingness to face pain without retreat. As you listen to this, reflect on the nature of control in your own life. Are you holding on to illusions that limit your growth? Are you awakening to the quiet strength within you? The soul contract challenges us all to confront these questions, to recognize the shadows we dance with, and to choose freedom over illusion. When the contract backfires, expanded explanation, there comes a moment quiet, almost imperceptible, when the soul contract begins to unravel. It is a moment few witness, yet it marks a profound turning point in the dynamic between the empath and the narcissist. This is the moment of the empath's silent withdrawal. The empath, who has long been the wellspring of emotional energy, suddenly begins to pull back. This withdrawal is not loud or confrontational. It is subtle, like the slow retreat of the tide beneath the surface of the ocean. The empath's spirit, once endlessly available, now conserves itself, protecting the self from further harm. This withdrawal is not born of bitterness or revenge, but of necessity. The empath recognizes that to continue giving without boundaries is to dissolve their own soul. They begin to set invisible walls, reclaiming parts of themselves that were lost in the contract. This quiet retreat sends shockwaves through the narcissist's fragile world. For the narcissist, this withdrawal is like a sudden blackout in a once brightly lit room. The energy they depended on, the emotional supply that fed their false self, begins to dry up. The constant reflection, the endless admiration and forgiveness, ceases. With this loss, the narcissist's carefully constructed identity starts to unravel. Their false self, built on manipulation, control, and projection, is suddenly exposed as hollow and fragile. The mirror they used to see themselves reflected is no longer there. In this moment, the mirror shatters. What lies beneath is a shadow they have long denied, the parts of themselves they have hidden, repressed, or refused to acknowledge. This shadow is not merely the darker aspects of personality, but the very core of their true self, raw and unfiltered. The narcissist, now confused and exposed, faces a painful reckoning. For years, they have worn masks of strength, superiority, and control to hide their fear, shame, and insecurity. But with the empath's withdrawal, these masks crumble, leaving them vulnerable and lost. Who am I beneath this mask? This question echoes in the empty space left by the broken contract. The narcissist may respond with denial, rage, or despair, but beneath these reactions lies a deep existential crisis. They are confronted with the truth of their fragmented self, a self built on illusion, needing constant validation to survive. This moment of exposure is crucial, for it offers the possibility of transformation. The narcissist, if willing, may begin the difficult journey into their own shadow to face the fears and wounds that have driven their behavior. But this path requires humility and courage, qualities often foreign to the narcissist. Many resist this truth, clinging desperately to their illusions, and the cycle continues. Meanwhile, the empath's withdrawal is not the end of connection, but the beginning of a new relationship, one with themselves. In reclaiming their energy, the empath moves toward healing and self-discovery. This shift in the soul contract is not simply about loss or defeat, but about awakening. It reveals the intricate dance of shadow and light, control and freedom, illusion and truth. The contract backfires because the narcissist underestimated the empath's inner strength and the power of consciousness. The empath's withdrawal breaks the cycle, forcing both souls to confront the realities they had long avoided. As you consider this moment, reflect on your own patterns. Have you experienced the silent withdrawal of your spirit? Have you faced the shattering of your illusions, the painful question of who you truly are beneath the masks you wear? The soul contract challenges us all to look beyond appearances, to face our shadows, and to seek the authentic self waiting beneath. The aftermath, freedom and reckoning, expanded explanation. After the silent withdrawal and the shattering of illusions, what remains is the aftermath, a moment heavy with despair, liberation, and profound reckoning. This stage of the soul contract is both an ending and a beginning, a threshold between old patterns and the potential for transformation. For the narcissist, this aftermath is a plunge into darkness. Once they believed themselves in control, the master puppeteer pulling strings with confidence and certainty. But now, stripped of the empath's reflected light, they find themselves spiraling into a void of despair and confusion. The energy that sustained their false self has vanished, and with it, their sense of identity begins to dissolve. The narcissist's world collapses because it was never built on a foundation of genuine selfhood. Their existence depended on external validation, on the admiration and attention of others, especially the empath. Without this reflection, they are forced to confront the emptiness beneath their carefully maintained mask. This confrontation is brutal. They face the unfiltered reality of their shadow, the parts of themselves they have hidden, denied, and rejected. It is a reckoning with their own fears, insecurities, and the deep wounds that drive their compulsions. For many narcissists, this reckoning is overwhelming, leading to panic, rage, or retreat into further denial. The loss of control is a psychological crisis that shakes the very core of their being. Yet, in this darkness lies a possibility. The narcissist can, if willing, begin the painful journey of self-reflection and healing. To move beyond the facade requires immense courage, the courage to face one's shadow without defense, to acknowledge the brokenness, and to seek wholeness. This process is not guaranteed, but it is the path toward genuine transformation. In stark contrast, for the empath, this aftermath is a moment of liberation and awakening. The withdrawal from the soul contract is not a retreat into isolation, but an emergence into self-discovery. Freed from the exhausting cycle of giving and sacrifice, the empath begins to reclaim their power and their sense of self. The empath's journey beyond the contract's illusion is a journey inward toward boundaries, self-compassion, and authenticity. This is where true healing begins. The empath learns that love is not endless self-sacrifice, but a balance between giving and receiving. They realize that compassion must include themselves, not just others. This awakening allows the empath to break free from unconscious patterns of submission and codependency. They begin to see the soul contract for what it truly is, not a bond of love or control, but a shadow dance, a complex interplay of wounds, needs, and projections. This shadow dance forces both souls to face themselves. It is a mirror reflecting the deepest parts of their psyche, their fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts. The soul contract becomes a crucible for transformation, inviting both empath and narcissist to confront their shadows and move toward integration. The aftermath, therefore, is a paradoxical space filled with pain and despair, but also with hope and possibility. It is a moment of truth, where the illusions fall away, and what remains is the raw material for growth. For the empath, this is a call to embrace their own wholeness, to nurture the self they once neglected. For the narcissist, it is an invitation to shed falsehood and encounter the authentic self beneath the mask. In this reckoning, the soul contract reveals its true purpose, not to trap or control, but to awaken. It is a profound lesson in consciousness, a challenge to recognize the shadows we carry and to choose the difficult path of healing. As you reflect on this, ask yourself, how do you respond when control slips away? What parts of your shadow rise to the surface? And are you ready to face the truths that emerge when the contract backfires? The aftermath is not an end, but a beginning, a threshold to freedom and self-awareness. It is here, in this space of reckoning, that true transformation begins. Conclusion. A question to you. Expanded explanation. Now, I turn to you, the listener. The journey through the soul contract between empath and narcissist is not merely a distant story. It is a mirror held up to your own inner world. I ask you, where are you in your own soul contract? Are you still caught in the shadows of unconscious patterns, repeating the same cycles of pain and control? Perhaps you feel trapped, bound by invisible chains woven from past wounds and unhealed parts of your psyche. These soul contracts are not always with another person. Sometimes they are contracts we make with ourselves, with our fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts. Are you clinging to illusions? Illusions that tell you control means safety, that giving endlessly will win love, or that your worth depends on the reflection you see in others' eyes? Such illusions offer temporary comfort, but ultimately bind us in chains stronger than iron. Or is the contract beginning to turn within you? Is there a subtle stirring, a quiet awakening drawing you toward your true power? True power, I say, is not domination or manipulation, but the courage to face your shadows and integrate them. It is the strength to set boundaries, to reclaim your energy, and to embrace your authentic self. The soul contract challenges us to step out of unconscious patterns and into conscious awareness. It invites us to become alchemists of the soul, transforming pain into wisdom, control into freedom, and illusion into truth. This process is never easy. It requires honesty, courage, and a willingness to endure discomfort. Yet, it is the path to wholeness. So I ask again, where are you in this sacred dance? Are you ready to awaken, to break free from the roles assigned by old wounds, and to embrace the freedom that lies beyond? The answer is yours alone. But remember, the moment of awakening often begins with a single question, and the willingness to listen deeply to its answer.